Hello again, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Noble Father podcast. I am your host, Theophilus. Today is September the 23rd of 2024. And however you found yourself here, this is a podcast of a father who is imperfect, just like the next guy. And I like to speak about my life, the faith components of my life. These are inescapable things in my identity and everything I see in life and I encounter in life, I like to share here. And hopefully people can distill wisdom for themselves and are moved to be better in their walks of life. The name Noble Father is not one in which, is purely descriptive of me. If you were to ask me whether or not I am noble, or if I believe myself to be noble, I would probably say no. If it wasn't for what Jesus did on the cross for my sins and for the things that I'd done, I wouldn't believe those things, right? There's a lot of things in my upbringing that I'm not very proud of, and definitely look back on with a bit of, I wish I'd done things differently, let's just say. And, I had a very personal experience with God. Got really quiet, right? I was saying a lot of things about myself. Things like, oh, you're a liar, you're a cheater, you're just descriptive words, adjectives that people were calling me that God never said about me. And I really had to give that up to God and hand it back to him, because ultimately it doesn't really matter what anybody else says. And so when I went to God and I asked him, what do you see me as? What do you call me? Noble was what he called me. And so, when I in the period where I was figuring out, Lord, who do you want me to help? What do you want me to do? What is the potential that you want me to fulfill? What is the people group that you want me to serve? Fathers was the audience. And so when I was thinking about, the ideas about fatherhood, how can I serve them? What were the things that I, could do for fathers? Holding space for them, creating a membership. It was something that really was brought to my attention, and God really opened my eyes to how I had been doing that my whole life. To give you an example, in high school, I was friends with a lot of different groups of friends. The Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh card playing friends. I hung out with them. Soccer, playing kids, like we call them Hongers, right, which are Hong Kong kids who didn't speak very good English. I would hang out with them, and then I'd hang out with the jocks, and then I'd hang out with the druggies, and then I'd hang out with the bad kids in the school, and different groups of friends. I was very much a chameleon, because I didn't know who I was. I could be anybody, really. And mesh myself with everybody, so I adjusted really good. I can change, I guess, quickly to suit the people that I am with. And so, part of growing up as an Asian in Venezuela, and as a pastor's kid, as a Canadian, I was a lot of everything, and really didn't really know who ultimately I was. And so, that whole experience of going seeking God for what he said about me, that's why it was so impactful for me. Of course, this is not what I've wanted to talk about in today's episode. Forgive the light situation. I'm figuring out. I gotta get this sorted, really, because we picked up some bulbs and they've been starting to crap out, and so this is definitely not podcast quality lighting, for this kind of production. Today's podcast, man, it's been a crazy week. A week in which a lot of reconciliation has been taking place, and it was a theme through last week. It was strange, had three different encounters with three different people. And, judging from last week's podcast, I'm sure you guys heard, how I felt about certain one of those. And so, reconciliation is a difficult thing, and it's not easy. It's so easy for us to get the details muddled, right? We sweep things under the rug. We try to avoid it, and then we stress out about it. What is stress, right? Stress is having having control over a certain circumstance, and choosing not to act, and that circumstance later coming back and haunting us, right? Or continuing to haunt us. And so, in reconciliation, there was a particular member in my community whom we were having certain flare-ups on the meetups, and not necessarily sure why this person was responding in a certain way to prompts, even lighthearted, fun prompts that we felt as a group. And, it put us in a very difficult position, right? This person on the meetup, after their flare up, typed up a long message and sent it to me, and, not very happy and, frankly upset, about the way they were treated, and, threatening to leave the group. And so, when the meetup ended, I tried to, respond back, and, the messages were being misunderstood as well. And so, I was like, well, maybe we should have a conversation. And, nothing happened, didn't have a conversation. And then another week went by, another meetup came, and then we were kind of walking on eggshells because this person was in the meetup again. And so I was kind of put in a difficult position, right, to see, well, what do we do about this, right? I tried to reach out, nothing happened. And so, what do we do? And, I'm not the type to lead with an iron fist in my group. I'm not a dictator in that group. I do feel it's more of a us thing than just a me thing. And so started seeking the opinion of the members, and we were starting to lean towards, okay, maybe this person is better off not being in the group. Until one of the members was like, you should definitely have a conversation again, right? Clear this up. Don't just send a message, because I was typing out, a message, and it was a few days of preparation, figuring out what to say, how to say it. And so, I reached back out and I said, hey, we definitely need to have a conversation, at least before the next meetup, because we can't be, this is just not good to be left vague, right? And so reached out for a conversation, and we finally had one. I was expecting a 1 hour conversation, and it turned into a 3 hour conversation. This conversation, I'm hoping to have it edited and to be able to be released, because it turned out later on that it was just a very enlightening conversation. And so, what I learned about that conversation was that, this individual was wired differently, or is wired differently. And, they self-diagnose themselves as neurodivergent, also have a bit of autism in their so they're on the spectrum, but at the same time, dealing with ADHD and something he calls ADHD, which is autism with ADHD or something in that kind of combination. I don't really necessarily, still know how that plays into who he is, because, this person is self-diagnosed and not professionally diagnosed. And so I'm not willing to just take somebody's diagnosis and say that is the truth, or whatnot. But, I walked away enlightened from that conversation, and we ended up having a meetup together as a group again, where we addressed what happened, and talked about what was reconciled. Not necessarily sure, what still needs to happen, because, in those situations, it feels like we're moving and bending our will to somebody else. but I see where they're coming from as well. But I'm glad we had those conversations to really clear up what ultimately had happened. And then I had another conversation with another gentleman, another member of our community who at one point was, starting a business with another member of our community. And if you really ask me, it's like, if you're starting a business together, it has really nothing to do with us as a community. But I wish them all the best, and so they try to make it happen. And then at some point, for whatever reason, one of the members decided to ghost the other, and that was a difficult conversation. And we didn't see this gentleman, and so this gentleman eventually came back to us, and I had a conversation with him, and it was one that I waited, and I should have responded right away and immediately, and that caused a bit of a rift in the community. And so it was a conversation that was much needed. It was a good conversation to clear up, right? You don't want to leave too many elephants in the room. And so I've been really giving up the conversations to people, and it was amazing because this week, as I'm going through these things, God was really meeting me along the way and teaching me about reconciliation and what does a brother, what does relationships, what does it ultimately mean? And so see, the light is flickering again, and I'm taking that as a sign to read something before I close this episode. And something that really came to me this week that really impacted me was a particular proverb while I was going through this week. And it's something that I want to use over and pray over, is if you're listening to this podcast and you're able to close your eyes, I ask that you would close your eyes and listen to me read this, because in the moment I was like, man, it's so easy for us in conflict to really push each other away and cause strife, and really and it impacts us as individuals, and relationships are frayed. And I really want you to think about those conflicts that you have in your relationships, people that you don't talk to because you have things left unsaid, or context that you hadn't sought, and really think about, consider having a conversation. As tough as it is, consider having a conversation. So take your time to close your eyes, be quiet, and be still in this moment, and let me read this. And I'm going to close with this proverb. I have a pretty big day ahead. My kids getting ready for school right now, and I don't have time to release the podcast today, and so I have to do this right now. So if you would join me and in listening to this. Proverbs 18. Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. When weakness comes, contempt comes also, and with dishonor comes disgrace. The words of a man's mouth are deep waters, and the fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. It is not good to be partial to the wicked, or to deprive the righteous of justice. A fool's lips walk into a fight, and his mouth invites a beating. A fool's mouth is his ruin, and his lips are a snare to his soul. The words of a whisperer are like delicious morsels. They go down into the inner parts of the body. Whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous man runs into it and is safe. A rich man's wealth is a strong city, and like a high wall in his imagination. But destruction, a man's heart is haughty. Before destruction, a man's heart is haughty, but humility comes before honor. If one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame. A man's spirit will endure sickness, but a crushed spirit who can bear? An intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before the great. The one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. The lot puts an end to quarrels and decides between powerful contenders. A brother offended is more unyielding than a strong city, and quarreling is like the bars of a castle. From the fruit of a man's mouth his stomach is satisfied. He is satisfied by the yield of his lips. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. The poor use entreaties, but the rich answer roughly. A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. So I want you to remember that we're not promised tomorrow, so be present and stay noble. Bye for now.